Hello, everyone. Brad Libby here. Today, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about a tweet that I saw on Twitter or X by Assaad Razzouk. I follow Assaad. I'm familiar with his work. He published a book that I've read and I enjoy, and I recommend it to you. I'm not going to read the full title because this is a family-friendly channel, but it's called Saving the Planet: What They Don't Tell You About the Climate Crisis. So I follow Assaad on Twitter as well. I recommend that you do, especially if you're interested in issues like energy and electric vehicles and things like that. Today he tweeted, new electric vehicles set to capture an impressive 28% of global car sales in 2026, says the International Energy Agency, or the IEA. Petrol cars, so gasoline cars, will very soon be for museums only. Wild how off the mark the International Energy Agency, IEA, has been. In 2019, they thought we'd barely hit a 5% share by now. And he includes this graph, and here I'll zoom in on it. It says the IEA, International Energy Agency, forecast scoreboard, how estimates for 2026 global EV market share kept catching up to reality. So the y-axis here is projected global EV car sales share for 2026, and the x-axis is several IEA publications from 2019, 2020, so sequential years 2019 through 2026, and I apologize that my video is covering up the 2026 label, but you can see that these are different publications, and what they've done, this is not a graph of the actual EV market share over time. This is the IEA's estimates and for 2026 and how those estimates have changed over time. So way back in 2019, 7 years ago, they said 4%, and then 6 years ago in 2020, they said in 2026 it would be 5.5%, and then in 2021, so 5 years ago, they said in 2026 it would be 11%, and that's what those numbers represent. What we're seeing here, the thing I notice about this graph is it's basically a straight line. So I'll just draw some lines on it for you to help guide your eye here. Here's this lavender line is 28%. So if way back in 2019 they had guessed 28%, which is the actual value, then their estimate would have been up on that lavender line. But what we can do, we're seeing that, this is a straight line, basically. So realistically speaking, here I've just drawn this red line on, by hand. This is not a regression analysis or anything like that. I just said, let's just draw a line through the first few points. If you, let's say back in 2022, when their outlook, the IEA's outlook document was published, you would have had these first 4 points data points at that time. You draw a straight line through those, and you continue that straight line forward. And what you would have found is as we get closer and closer to the 2026 date, their estimate for the EV market share in 2026 would have gotten closer to the actual value. And it's a very regular change in their estimate over time. Every year, they're reducing the error. They're reducing what I call the delta. So delta is a engineering term for the difference between any two quantities. In this case, the actual value 28% and the IEA's estimates for different years. So I call this technique watch the delta. It doesn't always work. There are a lot of caveats here. You have to have a number of years of estimates. It has to come from somebody who's making a good faith estimate here and is not, intentionally trying to manipulate you or something. But this is a very simple technique for how you can project and figure out what someone else's estimates might be, or even your own estimates might be in the future based on your prior track record. So here's another example. This is one that I dug up off of Wikipedia, which was the estimate. I found this table in Wikipedia for various years for the James Webb Space Telescope for each year, what was the planned launch date for the James Webb Space Telescope. So when it was announced back in 1997, the expected launch date was 2007, which is 10 years into the future. But by 2002, which is 5 years later, the expected launch date had been revised to 2010. So in that 8 years into the future. So in 5 years of calendar time, the launch date had decreased from 10 years into the future down to 8 years. So I think you can see where I'm going with this. The same thing as with Mr. Razzouk's tweet, which is, by 2008, the launch date was 2014, which is 6 years away. So the expected launch date had decreased from 8 to 6 years over the course of 6 years. By 2013, 5 years later, they said 2018. So in 5 more years of time, the expected launch date had decreased from 6 to 5 years away. So if you only had, I've just plotted these numbers here. By 2018, they said 2020. So in 5 more years, the expected launch date had decreased from 5 to 2 years away. So based just on these values here, okay, maybe we ignore the earlier ones. We draw a straight line through these. We are a bit generous with our estimate, whatever. I've done this again here, just, guide the eye. The last went back to 2006. Of course, the kicker here, the reveal, is that the actual launch date for the James Webb Space Telescope was Christmas Day, 25th of December, 2021. So as far back as like 2006 or so, 15 years before its actual launch, you could have just looked at the delta, looked at how many years they said into the future. That's what this y-axis is. It's the years left until expected launch. By about 2006 or so, 15 years before launch, you could have estimated that the launch date was going to be somewhere in late 2021, maybe early 22. And that's exactly what happened. So yeah, again, very simple technique, doesn't always work, has a lot of caveats, but I was very pleased with Mr. Razzouk's example, and I suggest that you follow him on Twitter if you like his work. Thank you very much.